Remember, knowledge is not free. You have to pay attention on Past the Wire TV.
You're watching Past the Wire TV.
Ciao tutti.
What's going on, everybody? Ciao, ciao.
Ciao ciao. And we got a special guest. I'm going to bring him on the screen. I'm going to bring our special guest on the screen. Ace, can you hear us?
I hear you fine. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, we can. Okay. Let me tell, for those of you who don't know who John DaSilva is, who I call Ace, we go back a long ways. Very, very, very knowledgeable horse racing mind, not only from the handicapping side, but from the business side, the sporting side, and the history side. Used to write for the New York Post when there was a New York Post that covered horse racing. And right now, I would say he used to make the odds at the morning line at Parks, but he right now is probably the guy who, in my opinion, so nobody could argue with it because it's my opinion, is the man most responsible for turning the Pennsylvania Derby and Cotillion into what they've become in the past 4 or 5 years, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever you want to say, which are both major races. So congratulations, Ace, on a job well done that I personally also think you never get enough credit for, but great job, great races. People like to bash Parks, but they can't bash it on that day. Welcome to the show, Ace.
Thank you very much, John. I really appreciate it. I do my best to bring quality and quantity, and I heard the whispers. I heard people talk about we're not going to get big fields and everything else, and I wanted to make sure that I proved them wrong, that we were going to get quality and quantity, and I think we've done that, considering everything we had to go against us.
Now, you know, a lot of people may not know what goes into putting together a race like the Pennsylvania Derby. Okay. A lot of people may just think, you know, whoever enters, and that's it. And the track really does nothing else. And that's not the case. You start working on the field for the Pennsylvania Derby, even though you're not a trainer with a horse, months in advance. Am I correct?
You're correct. I mean,
can you talk us through that process when you start and what you actually do to put a field together, if you would?
Well, basically, I had to start paying attention all year with the 3-year-olds getting ready for the Kentucky Derby. You want to see who the hot 3-year-olds are, who might be good, who might get laid off, might come back later on down the road. I even tried getting the Japanese to come, but unfortunately, because of the way things are with the government right now, it's cost prohibitive for them to come over. But you have to start working months in advance. And as the year goes on, you contact them, you let them know. And if anybody shows up that's new, you contact them as well. And through the years, from riding at the post and working at Parks and Racing Office, you develop relationships, and you have to keep up with these relationships and develop new relationships. And hopefully, you know, you keep us in their mind, you know, with our races. And sometimes you have to send little reminders to let them know. So you look at what's happened in the past, we don't run every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks like we used to. Trainers have to plan 2-3 months in advance. So I have to start working that long to just so they could schedule and do the right thing. Look at Stronghold. He's going to go to the Breeders' Cup Mile, but he looking at using our race as a prep for that. He was going to go Haskell and he's going to go Pennsylvania Derby, but instead they went to Indiana and then they went to our race. So they always make adjustments. So you have to adjust with them as well.
And you do, and we've spoken about this, and we've spoken early in the year about horses you were going to target, but you'll actually call trainers up and connections of a horse up and say, listen, have you considered our race? The timing is perfect, or this is a good path for you to get to this other race, and things like that. It gets that involved, correct?
It definitely gets that involved, because you go at the Cotillion, for example, we have a horse like Everland, Eric Foster. Now, people wondering, who in the world is Everland? Well, if they paid attention to Everland earlier this year, you saw that she ran at Turfway Park, and she did win the Bourbon at Oaks. With Abel Castillo riding that day at 11-1. And even though it's synthetic, it puts her on the map. And she did run in Kentucky Oaks, and she ran very well, finishing 5th. And even though she hadn't won a race since then, these are people you want to talk to and keep in contact with. And I called Eric, and he thought about it. He says, you're right. So he wasn't considering running in the Cotillion until I called him and I contacted him.
Gotcha. And that's a fascinating part of the game that a lot of people may not know about. Now, the other thing, and I know this is a crazy weekend for you, so I really appreciate you coming on. I won't keep you much longer. But the other question I'd like to ask you, and I'd like you to explain to people, which I think a lot of people have a misconception about, is the morning line. Now, I know you don't make the morning line anymore, but you did for many years, and you were damn good at it. What is a morning line supposed to reflect, and what goes into actually making one? And you could use the Pennsylvania Derby as an example, or any way you want to explain it, if you would.
Basically, the morning line, many people have a misconception of it. It's not who we think is going to win. The morning line is the way I see it, is what I think the public is going to make the horse at post time. Now, there are certain parameters that you have to use. For example, when I was doing the morning line, I was told I couldn't make a horse less than 6-5. I couldn't make a horse more than 20-1. Now, I am one who doesn't exactly like going parameters like that, because if I see a horse that is always going up 25, 30-1, no way in the world I'm making him 20-1. He deserves to be 30-1. And if I think a horse is that much of a favorite that he's going to win, I'm going to make him less than 6-5. Maybe that's why I'm not doing it anymore, because I went against those parameters. But you have to do the right thing. And there are people out there who says, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. If I want to make a horse 7-1, I'll make a horse 7-1. And I've done it in the past. And I'll do it 9-1. It may not be logical to most people, but if it fits under the parameters, I'll do it. You just have to go about to see what happens. Now, you have a point system with the odds, and it's very difficult, especially bigger fields, to fit with that point system, especially if you have parameters. But if it was me, I try to do the best I can to get to within the points, whether it's 125, 130, whatever. I try my best to make it happen. But it's not that simple. And you look at the Kentucky Derby, that's always in the 150s, 160s, for example. That's a 20-horse field. It's impossible.
Can you do me a favor? And this is something that even I personally have never really grasped. Okay, if you told me, and I've never made a morning line officially. Okay, in my own mind, I make one, like I have an idea of what I think horses are going to go off, what they should go off. But I've never sat down and made a morning line. What is that BS system? And maybe it's not BS. You may tell me, no, John, it makes sense. Where you got to come up with 100 points or 120 points. It's got to equal a certain number. What is that all about? Why does it have to equal a certain number? What's the mathematics involved in that? And explain it to me like you spoke to somebody who dropped out of school, because I did.
Well, there is a chart that assigns points to the odds. And basically what happens is you want to add up the points to the takeout and then a little wiggle room. So, for example, if you have a takeout of 16%, the minimum, the point system should be 116, but you always have to give it a little bit more, because you're not going to get exactly 116, 117 or whatever. So you always say give it a little more. So let's say like 5 to 10 points higher, if possible, because let's face it, you got horses at 4-5, you're going to get horses over 20-1, but you're not going to go and do a 23-1 or a 38-1 or something like that. So you just try to do an approximation as close as possible. And that's what we try to do when we do this. You look at Thorpedo Anna. A lot of people are saying that she should not be 4-5, that she should be lower. And personally, I agree. She should be less than 4 to 5. But the problem is, how do you get these odds to equal a good point system to add up to a decent amount of numbers? I mean, you look at the Cotillion, we got many stake winners in there, and the only non-stakes winner in there ran second. He's trained by Bill Mott. You want to make Bill Mott 30 to 1? I don't. I mean,
Right.
I wouldn't.
Makes sense.
You
Yeah.
know,
I
and
want, if I can, and John, I have a question for you regarding the PA Derby as a whole, but I wanted to first make a comment regarding the morning line. John, you with us? Or you froze?
No, I'm here.
Oh,
He's
okay.
here.
I thought I see you froze. Anyway, so as a handicapper, a very detail-oriented handicapper, over the past, I would say 6 or 7 years, instead of me, and I've spoken about this on different shows, instead of me recognizing the morning line and doing my capping based on that, I make believe it's not even there, or I stop my capping without it. And what I wanted to share, what I do as a morning line creator, is I take in the horse's full body of work. It's not just the last 10 past performances. And obviously all the contributing factors, the most recent form, past form, company shared, distance, this, that, and the other thing, the connections. So I feel the morning line, whoever's responsible for it at a specific track, and John, you know this better than anybody. That's why I can appreciate what you guys were saying. But it is a matter of opinion. And yeah, it's guided to position the public to make an informed decision as a guide. But there's been difficulty at times. I've said, especially maiden special weights, without the race history, they're making the morning line based on reputation of connections, riders, workouts, and pedigree.
not just that. You also have to handicap the owners and the trainers, because you have certain trainers who they go out there and say, "Oh, my horse can't lose; he's going to win." And he tells certain friends, certain people, they all start betting on it, and they may go off lower than what they're supposed to. We have owners; they love their horses so much they'll bet hundreds of dollars at a place like Parks, where you don't have the handle like in New York. That's going to show more at the windows, and it's going to show on the odds board. It gets affected. I mean, a bigger track, it will be some effect, but not as much as a place like Parks. Let's look at tomorrow. Seize the Gray. He's going to have many of his owners at the racetrack tomorrow. Are they big bettors, small bettors? I don't know. But you have to take that into consideration that a lot of those people will be betting. And he's got 2,562 owners.
Wow.
So, John, that's a good point. Have you done this before? John, I believe you've done. John Stetton, and this is for John DaSilva. While handicapping, you automatically, by default, recognize a horse based on the morning line that's posted, a horse that will be a significant overlay or will be a significant underlay, and you look for it. And when that happens, that's what puts you in a position to make a more informed decision for yourself from an investment perspective, on top of who you like to win the race.
I mean, one example I always like to use is the Jockey Club Gold Cup years ago at Saratoga, where David Aragona, who probably is the best morning line odds maker in America right now, he made Gunnevera the 4-1 favorite. Now, as a handicapper, do I like Gunnevera to win that race? No, because he's a horse who, even though he was talented, he only won in short stretch races. 5 of his 6 victories came in short stretch races, either going mile 16 at Gulfstream Park or at Delta Downs. So when I see a horse like him at 4-1 on a regular stretch, I go against him. But the public thinks he's going to get bet, and you have to take advantage of that. Now, it's not the morning line odds maker telling him he's 4-1, he's going to win, but he's telling you that's what he thinks the public's going to make him. And sure enough, that's what the public made him. And did he win? No. And you take advantage of those overlays because of that.
Absolutely, John. That's the point.
It's interesting stuff.
And I wanted to ask John about the PA Derby, because if anybody knows, it's John. John, this used to be a grade 2 event. And obviously we're at grade 1, and it's $1 million event. If I can remember correctly, and I'm sort of a historian, I believe this PA Derby could have gotten started right around 1980. And if it did, it's progressed and has grown, especially over the last decade. What can you share in terms of its growth, bringing the attention of large barns, big connections, big time horses, like for example, in recent years, and I was going to talk about it on the show, some of the history, but what did I write down? I wrote down, well, look what's happening this year. But in recent years, like when Hot Rod Charlie went against Essential Quality in the Belmont Stakes, the name was a household name. So when he came over to the PA Derby and matched up with Midnight Bourbon, it created a lot of interest. And sure enough, that's a morning line that was proper, right? If I can remember, they ran 1-2 down a stretch, cold exacta, but the high profile owners, barns, and horses, when did they start surfacing at parks for this PA Derby?
One thing that helped was the moving of the date, because at one time it used to be run on Labor Day weekend and on Labor Day itself. And the decision was made to move it later on in the month of September, because then you can get horses that ran in the Travers who could come back and run in the Pennsylvania Derby.
That was huge. That was huge.
Big move. Good point.
Yeah. And it's a huge move because now it's also good prep for the Breeders' Cup, because you give yourself 5-6 weeks or whatever prepping for the Breeders' Cup Classic. It gives everyone that last prep for the Classic, maybe to show the Breeders' Cup committee that they deserve to be invited to the Classic if the race is oversubscribed, and also gives them a good prep getting them ready for the Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, you look at what we have this year, for example, because of the influx of foreign horses in the Breeders' Cup Classic, there's going to be less horses going in domestically into the Classic if they don't have a winner in or they don't have enough points earned. Winning a grade 1 might put them over the top if they have enough points, but they get in automatically without having the committee to bring them inside. You take a horse like Stronghold, he might be on the bubble. A victory here or a good second might put him in there. You take one of these young developing 3-year-olds, if they can win the Pennsylvania Derby impressively, it might tell committee, we need to bring this horse into the race. He's coming in the right direction. I mean, a Dragoon Guard who's won 4 in a row, he would probably be on the outside looking in because he's only got grade 3 victories right now. You at the grade 1, he might get in there with points, but if he doesn't get in there with points, the committee probably puts him in.
Put him right in. Yeah.
Doing so good.
Yeah, he's probably the one horse that it's probably the biggest key to getting in would be winning, I would say.
Is it fair to say that it became $1 million grade 1 event? Because I know for a fact there was a grade 2 event.
Yeah.
Was it Bob Baffert and West Coast? If I can remember correctly, Bob Baffert trained West Coast came into Parks and he won like the wind blows. He dominated the field.
Yeah.
I think that was the cusp. I think that could have been the year that the PA Derby became a race that everybody needed to have a horse entered in.
That could have been it. I mean, the one thing I would say is Bob has always liked and run very well here. The one thing I would say when it comes to horses like him is he's not the only one who took advantage of it. I mean, we have Brad Cox who's taken advantage of it. We've had Steve Asmussen take advantage of it. I mean, remember, Steve Asmussen a couple of years ago won the Charlestown Oaks and then comes back and wins the Cotillion. And now that horse is still running, and she's going to be running in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint. I mean, you got good horses, and they've been able to use this. I mean, you have a horse like Will Take Charge, who for Dean Wayne Lucas, first half of the year, he was horrible. But second half of the year, he put in a nice run, and the Pennsylvania Derby was part of it. So it all depends on who the horse is, who the connections are, and how they go about it. And also the one thing I will say is putting it all together and moving it, it definitely helped with the handle, because at one point the record handle was only 10 million. When Hot Rod Charlie won, it was 14. The year after, it turned out to be 18. And my goal this year is I wanted to go over 20. Last year we did 17, even with the bad weather and everything else. But this year I want to go over 20, having also the pick 4 and the double with Presque Isle Downs with the Masters and the mile. I think it's going to help us as well, and I think we will get 20 this year. How much over 20? I hope a lot, but we just have to wait and see what happens.
One last question before you go, Ace. I know you're busy, but were you surprised that you got the big filly?
No. He's been talking about this for weeks. Now, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, no, that's not going to happen, especially after running the Travers. But in my opinion, in my eyes, he's trying to get Horse of the Year. Because you look at the males, there is no solid favorite for the older horse for Horse of the Year. And right now, Fierceness is your leading 3-year-old, but would I say he's a solid favorite? No, he's a favorite, but I would say a solid favorite. I mean, he could just as easily lose as he could win. You look at a horse like Thorpedo Anna, her loss in the Travers probably helped her chances with that because she got so much respect. And another victory in this race, and you come back and beat Adair Manor and Idiomatic in the distaff, she's going to be a heavy favorite Horse of the Year, and that's what Kenny's looking at right now. Because who has a better record than her?
Yeah, no, you're right. And Kenny's very smart when it comes to that.
I'm going to reinforce what you just said. If she pulls off a big win at Parks on Saturday and wins the Breeders' Cup Distaff and knocks off mares like Raging Sea and Idiomatic and Adada Mara, she's going to be a Horse of the Year. It'd be inevitable she's the Horse of the Year.
And Kenny loves the history, and he will do things like that. And give the man credit. She's the most popular horse in America right now. He's done a great job putting videos out there, talking her up and everything else, but her actions back it up.
No
and
question.
You have to appreciate that. And we haven't had something like this in a long time where you don't hear anybody talking negative. I mean, you hear about California Chrome, there are people talking about negative stuff about that horse. American Pharoah, there's still negative stuff. Justified, there's still negative stuff. You don't hear any negative stuff with Thorpedo, and that's because Kenny's done an outstanding job in terms of the access, putting her out there, putting her name out there. The only bad thing is we're not going to get sunny on Saturday, but still, it's going to be a great day, and having her there is going to be tremendous. And imagine the Thorpedo Anna fans and the My Racehorse fans. How loud is that going to be? Those two going up against each other.
It'll be an exciting day in Ben Salem.
John, it may be one of the best.
Never saw the likes of a day like you're going to see, right?
Yeah, and John made a good point.
Don't forget, next. I mean, this is a popular horse too. And people are telling me 4-horse field at the most. We got 10. I think we're going to get one scratch down to 9. But to get a horse like Next to defend his championship, who might be the most popular male horse in America right now, right. I mean, that's going to bring out a lot of people. And if he goes to Breeders' Cup Classic after this, we'll see. Because, look, I'm sure people aren't happy they took away that marathon on the undercard this year. So it's
I'm sure his connections are unhappy.
Yeah. I'm sure they're trying to push him into the Classic. But a horse like him, I mean, really, if you think about it, he should be the leader for the older horse Eclipse with what he's done this year.
Well, the way he's winning, he runs faster in the last quarter of a mile, and he's going a further distance. He's extraordinary. He really is.
Now the pace has something to do with it too.
I think he's 1-9 on Saturday, and everybody claps for him down the stretch, winning again by 8.
Well, you got 1-5 on the morning line. Some people say negative wind pull. Definitely negative show pull in that race. I think there's a guarantee that's going to happen.
No doubt.
Now let's see if My Imagination 84-1, who's in the race, can come back and be second in catching riding with Biden or not. Even though, I will say this, Uriah St. Louis is talking a lot of stuff. You know he loves to upset. He's saying he's upsetting in the green with Martinera. Hey, Uriah's done it in the past, so I'm not going to take him lightly.
We'll see.
John, I have to ask you, John DaSilva, on this show, and John knows this, and our audience knows this, I've been talking about Thorpedo Anna since the beginning of the year, before the big race at Kentucky, on the big, the big Philly race, the Kentucky Oaks, when she came back with the layoff and won the fantasy. if she runs, if she wins Saturday, which is likely, wins the Breeders' Cup this year, are you starting to put her in the category like I have all year in the same mention with Personal Ensign?
Well, I wouldn't do Personal Ensign because Personal Ensign was undefeated, and all that with her record. But you have to put her up there with one of the greats we've seen in recent memory. I mean, is at Zenyatta level? No. But you had to say that she might be the best 3-year-old filly we've seen in the past.
That's what I'm saying. She's only 3. She's not 4 yet. So,
and Kenny could bring her back. It'll be interesting to see if she does come back. Does he run her in the Pegasus? Does he send her overseas? It'll be very curious to see what he does with her if he does decide to run her at 4.
Interesting, yeah. I tell you, in the Travers, she looked a little like Personal Ensign trying to go after Fierceness in the final 8, just the way Personal Ensign won her final 13th race coming from way back in the Breeders' Cup. Resilient.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And she definitely is resilient, and I said you got the right person to do it because, like I've said, you don't hear anything negative, and he's done everything right in terms of publicizing her, and you don't hear the negativity like you hear with some other horses.
No argument. Ace, thank you so much, man. I know it's a busy weekend for you, so I'm not going to hold you up. Thank you for coming on. I'm sure everybody appreciates it, and great job out there, man. You really turned both of those races around, man. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. Hey, it isn't just me though; it's a team effort from my boss David Nassadniak on down. We all have to work together. And we all want to make this work because this industry needs help, and we don't have the greatest of reputations. And some of it, I hate to say, is deserved. But in the end, we all work together. We can make things better. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Go
get it, Ace. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good luck, guys.
All right. We'll have you on again. Ciao.
Ciao.
All right.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, he's a good man. All right. We'll take a little break, I think. Get everybody in the mood for some handicapping talk. And we'll go from there. Sound good?
Absolutely.
All right. Don't go away. We will be back.
Thanks, guys. Looking at the Pennsylvania Derby down at Parks. I'll keep it brief. I think it's a 2-horse race. Dragoon Guard and Unmatched Wisdom. I went back this week and was watching a lot of replays. And Dragoon Guard's been pretty darn impressive. He runs that first quarter, that first half, like pretty well in hand. And when he needs to be asked, he responds. He's been solid, especially in that last race at Mountaineer. I thought he looked pretty impressive when he got a little bit of a challenge at the top of the stretch, and he drew off nicely. I will say, though, I really do like Unmatched Wisdom in this spot. Seemed like he wanted to be a little bit more forwardly placed in the Travers. I thought he broke fine. Perhaps maybe he just wanted to let the speed of the speed go, even though I probably thought he might have been the speed of the speed in the Travers, but, found himself in 5th place early and was a little bit rank along the backstretch and, was kind of fighting the jock a little bit. So I think he's going to be forwardly placed here on the lead with Dragoon Guard, if not sitting just off of Dragoon Guard in a close second. And I think that's going to be a more favorable, more advantageous spot for him. And I think just his raw talent is going to take over towards the end. I do think Unmatched Wisdom is going to have a much better showing against this field in here and get up over Dragoon Guard in the Pennsylvania Derby. So Unmatched Wisdom for me. Good luck if you're playing. And as a reminder, the NFL Week 3 power ratings are up on PassTheWire.com right now. Go check it out. I'll give you my game of the week on Sunday on Pass the Wire TV. So be sure to check that out. We're coming off a nice win last week with the Buccaneers as 7.5-point underdogs, winning outright. So we'll see if we can string a nice win together with unmatched wisdom on Saturday and an NFL play on Sunday. Thanks.
You can call it what you want, but to me, it's still the big A and always will be, at least for as long as it's around. For the Sure Bet Coffee Play of the Day, Race 10, Beautiful Love. That's who I like. Showed a lot of promise before she came over here in both England and in Dubai. Race at Saratoga was okay, not the best. Picks up Dylan Davis, gets more distance. I think both of those things will be key factors in her improving and handling this field, which I think is a little softer than what she faced last time. So I'm looking for some improvement from Beautiful Love to get the win at Aqueduct for the Sure Bet Coffee Play of the Day.
And here comes Beautiful Love on the grandstand side. The leader can find no more. But here comes Beautiful Love just rolling down the far outside of the turf course. And it's going to be Beautiful Love. Dylan Davis, they win the Fasing-Tipton Jockey Club Oaks Invitational.
Hey everybody, Gio Setti with a Wednesday play of the day, Kentucky Downs, race 8 to close out the meet. I'm on limited liability in the $500,000 Nashville, 2 miles and 1/16. I love these turf marathons. Love that Frankie Dettori is up for Shug McGahee. I like the way this gelding is training up to the race, working well, in my opinion. Has to turn the tables on Grey Wizard, but with the right trip, I think that will be a successful marathon.
Limited liability got out of the gate first and never looked back. Frankie Dettori with a front-running score going 2 1/16.
All right. I hope we got everybody in the mood. I meant to play Jim's clip later. Big Race Jim is at the Jets game, so he's not with us, but he was kind enough to send in his thoughts on the PA Derby, and I was going to play it after everything else, but yours truly hit the wrong button, which we know it's not the first time I've hit the wrong button. So at least it wasn't when I was making a bet and hit the wrong button. It was just that. So Big Race Jim, thanks for weighing in. Hope you're enjoying the Jet game. I know you're a big Jets fan, so hopefully things work out over there for you. Now, let's get to the business at hand. We're going to start with the Cotillion. And I'm going to say something that I think is important, okay? Most people, and I do not include myself in this category, look at a race and look at a horse and expect them to do what they did last time. And I don't do that, okay? I look at a race and I look at a horse and I try and figure out what they're going to do this time. And I think in the long run, that's a lot more valuable than what they did last time. And contrary to what you may think on the surface, is a lot of people don't think that way, which is why most horses that are coming off big wins are almost automatically favored next time. Horses that are coming off big races are almost automatically favored next time out. Thorpedo Anna. Most people are going to think that the Cotillion is a foregone conclusion for her off that monster race in the Travers against Boys, against Fierceness, when she really just proved herself. So my question is, when is the right time to bet against an odds-on overwhelming favorite? And that leads us to, is this the day to bet against Thorpedo Anna? And I'll say this about the Cotillion. when I handicapped the race, yes, she does look like a 2 to 5, 1 to 5 standout on paper. But they don't run these races on paper. So I say, okay, can I find a nick in the armor, so to speak, that says, today could be the day to bet against her? Because when you take that approach, all right, and I'm not afraid to bet a heavy favorite, and I'm not afraid to single a heavy favorite. But when you take that other approach and you bet against and beat a horse like that, how many times do you got to be right? 2 out of 10? 1 out of 10? She goes down. She takes 95% of the pick 5 tickets with her. Okay? So is there a reason to bet against her? And I'll weigh in on what I think might be a reason. And then, Gio, you could weigh in. I've got my eye on 2 horses that I think potentially can beat her. And I think that the only reason I could find that may signal some vulnerability is she's a 3-year-old filly coming off a grueling 1.25 mile race, coming back from August 24th to September 19th. It'll be the 21st then. Less than a month, almost a month, but not quite a month. So I'd say she's coming back relatively quick off a very, very, very hard-fought 1.25 mile race. That could have taken a little bit of the starch out of her, and I think she's going to have to beat a couple of lightly raced, up-and-coming horses that may be making forward moves. Forward enough to beat her? Well, if she doesn't regress, probably not. But I do think that coming off that hard race into Travers, that is going to make 90% of the people gravitate to her, maybe a tell or a signal that this might not be the day to gravitate to her. So with that, I would say I'm going to take the contrary approach. God bless you. Salute.
Thank you.
I'm going to probably take a good, hard, long look at Tarifa, who just didn't fire when she faced her in the Kentucky Oaks. But a lot of people considered her very strongly in the Kentucky Oaks, you being one of them, Gio. I remember that. Didn't fire, comes back, doesn't win at Ellis Park, but that was only 7/8. It looked like a race that Brad Cox was using to set her up for this race. And another horse I'm very intrigued by is the Belmont Judmont horse, the Arrogate filly that Jose Ortiz rides, Sidamara. Improving, getting better. Lost the Power Squeeze in the Delaware Oaks, but Power Squeeze come back and win the Alabama off that race. I think she can come back and win out of that race and turn the tables on Power Squeeze and maybe take down the Grizzly Bear in the process. Now, I could be crazy, but I think that it's potentially today what we would call in the NFL a trap game. Okay, they're thinking about the distaff. They're thinking about horse of the year. They're thinking this race is in the bag. You still got to put her in the gate, and she's got to get home first. Gio, I did enough talking about this. What do you think?
And I absorbed a lot too. So to add a little flavor to what you shared, yes, obviously thoroughbreds are not machines. You can't have a foregone conclusion and an expectation that what's been done will keep being done. But with that said, and I too will always approach every race, every field the precise same way. And you guys know that I have an attachment to Power Squeeze because she was my horse when she came storming down the track to win the Alabama. And I know what she's done in her body of work. And my eyes were on a horse that John had shared in Tarifa because I trust Brad Cox. Pratt's coming back on a horse. The last race clearly to me was a quote unquote prep, not necessarily needed to emerge victorious, ran a nice race, second off a layoff. The races at Fairgrounds were very, very promising. I thought this horse this filly was going to move forward a few times. And she disappointed me, in that big race with Thorpedo Anna, just blew everybody away in the Kentucky Oaks. Now, Thorpedo Anna, just to add to something that John said, yes, sometimes as you handicap in a race, brand new field, new circumstances, don't have that foregone conclusion. Realize the whole body of work. And obviously the Trav is a grueling, digging down deep stretch run, trying to get fierceness, which I saw coming. And now they come right back with her less than a month later. But here's the thing. The reason why I can't go against Thorpedo Anna, because when you calculate her full body of work, and I know you guys know the races, but then see how she come out after the race. If you look at her last work at Saratoga, September 14th, it's an indication of fitness, and she looked good during the workout. This is perfect timing for her to get a race, which I call against a softer field, because you would realize the nemesis could be somebody like Power Squeeze, who's lost her twice. And John, you made a very valid point, and then I'm going to give you my final decision, because my decision is going to be underneath. Sidamara is extremely interesting because it's the daughter of Arrogant. She's never run a bad race. She's shown the type of progression you want to see. She's 4 for 4 in the exactas, proven herself in the last time out against Power Squeeze, who come back and win like you said, the Alabama. But this could be too much of an ask to win. So when I broke this race down, I saw a bunch of fillies that still got promise and work to do. And I was attached to Tarifa, and I was attached to Power Squeeze. And one thing about Power Squeeze, you don't see many fillies having that God-given tenacity. I mean, she wants the wire. She's a fighter. She's a runner. But her times are inferior to Thorpedo Anna, and she's already leveled her twice. So my final analysis and handicap on this race, I think everybody's clapping for Thorpedo Anna in a stretch. I think she does overtake the field, 48 pole, maybe sooner, and everybody's clapping for her. And don't be surprised. Next will be 1-9. Don't be surprised this filly is 1-9. She's certainly going to be 1-5. She's not going to be 4-5. And you're right. It may create an advantageous advantage to you in a pool if you're looking to beat her. I don't know, John. I just don't think this is the right spot for it. I think the big effort to beat her is going to come in the Breeders' Cup Distat, because she's going to be facing older mares who are fighters like her. So, and I trust McPeak. McPeak bypasses this if she wasn't fit.
Okay. I think Ron brings out an interesting point that she had a slow work 2 weeks after the Travers. Maybe she didn't need much. They didn't ask her for much. I wouldn't read that much into it, but it is a good point.
It is a good point, but that's done intentionally. You don't want to, after that Travers, you don't want to burn out a 59 and change breeze and a minute flat breezing. I saw that as well. It's a good point. I saw that, but that's intentional. One other thing I didn't give to our viewers, I like to give the precise order, and there may be some things I'm going to do with this race. I do like John's 5 underneath, but not directly underneath. My order is Thorpedo Anna, Tarifa, Power Squeeze, Mike Smith's horse, who is a fast filly. I forgot to mention that horse. I wouldn't be surprised if Mystic Lake, all right, because she showed me something in her last. I wouldn't be surprised if Mystic Lake is leading every step of the way to the 8th pole. And then that final 8th grudgingly gives way to the 3 horses I speak of. Thorpedo Anna to win, Tarifa, and Sidamara. Everybody else, did I mention Power Squeeze? So my order is Thorpedo Anna, Tarifa, Power Squeeze, and Mystic Lake. And the only other horse I felt could be measured in any type of, contention would be those 4. I mentioned Cinemera and then Gunsong, because Gunsong is up and coming too. I just think she's not good enough to win.
Now, it's interesting, and I mean no disrespect by this whatsoever. And we talk this way to each other. Your analysis and dissection of the race actually made me want to bet against her more, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
You're telling me that you think she's going to inhale the field, she's going to take the lead whenever she wants, and it's her race to lose. And I agree, it's her race to lose, and she's obviously the most likely winner. But you mentioned 5 or 6 or 7 horses that had positive attributes about them. Okay?
And they're improving.
When I'm going to take, and I know you like them underneath, but you mentioned 5, 6, 7 horses in a hold on.
No, time out, John. Not 5, 6, or 7. I mentioned Power Squeeze, Tarifa, Mystic Lake, and the 5, Bill Mott's horse.
Okay, how many is that? How many is that?
That's 4 horses underneath her.
Okay, so and how many horses are in the race?
8.
Okay, so you mentioned 4 horses underneath her. That's 5 out of 8 horses you had good things to say about. Now, hear me out, all right? And I'm not disagreeing with anything that you said about any of those horses, okay?
For second.
I understand that. I get it. For second, you mentioned 4 out of 8 for second, okay? 5 horses, positive attributes about 5 of them.
Yes.
For me, when I want to bet and key and single a 1 to 9 shot or a 2 to 5 shot, I don't want to have a good thing to say about nobody else in the race. You follow me? I don't want to say this one's improving, this might, this. Now, I see it that way. I know you see it a little bit differently, much more in a way that is indicative
Let's
of
make
her
a point.
winning in the second. But I see it as vulnerability.
Okay, let me add another thing. This will be interesting to our viewers, and I guarantee you. Let's take Thoroughgraph and Byers in perspective. What'd she run? A -2, 2.5 over in the Travers?
I didn't look at the...
Okay. I assume she did. I don't know the fun, but I do know she ran a 111. She can regress. Hear me out. She can regress 2+ points on Thoroughgraph and go down to 100, 11 points on a buyer, and still win by 3. There's such a jump up with some of these fillies. I like some of the fillies. The horse you talked about, Bill Mott, she's never won a bad race. Daughter of Arrogant, she's an up-and-coming horse. But she ran 2 maiden specials and
according to Tom, she ran a 4 that day.
A 4, no -4?
That's correct.
Wow. Okay, Tom. And Tom, what did Fierceness run that day?
Let's see if he knows off the top of his head or if he's got the Thoroughgraphs in front.
That's surprising. Okay, so that's surprising. I'm surprised. So I stand corrected if she wasn't in a negative number. But from a biased perspective.
Okay, now listen, I get all that, and it's we're talking about a 1 to 9 shot.
Let's talk about one other horse together here, John. Because I brought her up, and you didn't. Were you impressed with Smith's horse for Safi Joseph, Mystic Lake?
Yeah, but I have a hard time taking her in this spot. The last thing I'll say about this race and why I think, it's just another weight in the vulnerability column is Parks can be a very quirky type of surface that some horses just don't take to, So all those things said, she can beat me for sure, and I'm definitely not going to bet a lot of money against her. But I think that this could be the day that you could maybe sting her. I definitely think that this staff, not to get ahead of ourselves, is going to be a day that she's really going to have to step up. Because I can tell you right now, she ran great in the Travers, but a 4 is not going to win the Breeders' Cup this staff. So with that in mind, we'll see what happens. Let's get to the Pennsylvania Derby. I'll be pretty short with a lot of these horses because I don't have as much to say about some of them as you. I'll start with Doc Sullivan, if that's okay. You want to give some history of the race, though, right?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I think you guys will find this interesting because I have a memory of many of my scores, and I had to go back, and this goes back to 2010. And if you want to watch a race that's a lot of fun to watch as a gambler and as a horse player, go back on your own personal time. You'll find it somewhere on YouTube or whatever. Go back to 2010, Morning Line. I almost want to talk about this when John DaSilva was talking about the Morning Line. The horse's name is Morning Line, won the Pennsylvania Derby. The horse was leading all the way, gets passed in the stretch. This is Johnny V up for Nick Zito. And the way that horse performed and overcame being passed, coming on powerfully on the inside to win the race. Dead game. Horse was 4-1. And yes, Mr. Setti, 14 years ago, made a big score that day. And that's why I was telling some of my followers and viewers that to that day, I only really focus on one day a year at Parks where I do a full card cap, and that's Pennsylvania Derby Day. And one other, by the way, this leads me to say something to do with short prices and have confidence to do it. That day I had the exacta cold and I had that horse to win. But fast forward to the race I brought up with Hot Rod Charlie. That year, Hot Rod Charlie, not only did I have a big score, Essential Quality over Hot Rod Charlie in the Belmont, which I felt were the only 2 horses in a race, and the exacta paid like $14 or $15. But that same year in the PA Derby, and you go watch that race, Hot Rod Charlie on paper and on performance over the track with Midnight Bourbon, there could be nobody else that could contend with them. And that exacta was a $10 exacta, but Hot Rod won by 2 or 3, and Midnight was second by 5. Sometimes you find a race that just reeks of that, and you can't be afraid to pull the trigger. All right.
Okay.
24 now. Go ahead. Now, John said he promised me I could give a little history, and you'll have fun watching those races. Go back to it. All right, John, let's do the 24 Pennsylvania Derby. You lead.
Doc Sullivan. Nice New York bred. Brings it every time. Game horse. Shows up. Brings it every time. Positive jockey switch, in my opinion, to Jose Ortiz, but a cut below these. I would say he would be a pretty decent sized surprise to win.
John, and I'll be as succinct as possible because I agree with everything you said. I did like Jose Ortiz. I think the rail suits this guy well. 9 for 9 in the money. New York bred, overmatched in this. I can't use that horse in my multiples. I feel the horse will be off the board.
All right, Seize the Gray. Coach Wayne Lucas, always fun to see him in these races, and he does have a history of popping up when you don't expect him to and winning when you do not expect him to. However, he falls into that category Saturday for me. I do not expect him to win. The horse won the Preakness with a beautiful wire-to-wire trip. He was, a little versatile because he won the Pat Day Miles stalking. But since those 2 races, he seems to have tailed off a little bit. And I don't see anything that jumps out to me, despite that very lively work on September 13th at Saratoga. But I don't see anything that says to me he's going to, wake up and run back to that better form he had earlier in the year.
Interesting, John. Yeah, so Seize the Gray, the last 2, to me, a major disappointment and also an indication that the horse was tired. Horse needed a break. Not built for the distance, in my opinion. 9 furlongs in this spot will be a pace factor. I think her golden day or days was back-to-back in the Pate Mile and the Preakness. A nice horse. Believe the horse needs it to be wet. It won't be wet on PA Derby Day. Off the board, in my opinion. Pace factor, but runs out of steam in the final quarter mile.
All right. Lonesome Boy, 30-1, 25-1, 40-1 going in the gate. Who knows? I think there's a lot of speed in the race. I think he's, going to add to that speed. I'm against him. No shot, in my opinion. Major shocker if he pulls it off.
Correct. And one thing I mentioned about Lonesome Boy, it's good that we're doing a deep dive covering all horses. The reason why I would not use them on any tickets, it's not just because of the morning line. The horse as a juvenile took forever to graduate. And then when you look at the body of work as a 3-year-old, the horse hasn't progressed and gotten faster. You can't take a horse like that. It's a toss for me.
All right. Timeout is a little interesting. Okay. Timeout is an improving horse. I like lightly raced improving horses, especially coming out of certain bonds. Bill Mott's bond is one of them. How I view Timeout is this. I think he could certainly wind up to be every bit as good as anybody in this race. I just don't think he's quite there yet. Would he shock me? No, he would not shock me. Am I going to use him? No, I'm probably not going to get to him unless I go very, very deep in this race on the pick 5 and leaving out. Betting against Thorpedo Anna, I may have to, but he's not my top, 1 or 2. But I do think he's a contender that has a chance. I'm just afraid he's not quite up to this yet, but might be later this year and certainly might be, this good next year.
Okay, John, good points. Good points. My points on this horse, 3rd time Rosario, world of respect for Bill Mott. I agree with you. Daughter of Curlin, will have a future. She's up and coming. He's up and coming. I'm still talking about the girls. What I didn't like is that this guy did not have a juvenile campaign. It's one of the things I don't like in terms of developing to win a very big race. Began his career in April. I liked all the races I saw. Even in the race where she got beat when he got beat by Unmatched Wisdom, the 2 words I used for this horse was moves forward. But in my opinion, moving forward contend, but moving forward enough to win this race, no. So Timeout is an underneath horse listed 5 on my grid in precise order. 5th.
All right. Protective. Protective to me is a horse that had kind of an odd campaign for Pod Pletcher. They ran this horse in some tough stakes while he was still a maiden. So obviously they thought he was good. And then when they dropped him back to a maiden race at Saratoga, the first time coming out of the Belmont Stakes, he didn't get it done at odds on. But last time he did put it all together. And, the fact that they ran him in those races when they did tells me that they do think he's good. And they do think that he's, a horse that belongs in this kind of company. He's another one like Timeout. I don't think he's quite as good as a couple that I like more. But I also don't think he's not without some kind of chance or puncher's chance, especially with Irad up if he has one of those, win 5-6 races on a big day kind of days, which he throws in there every once in a while. So contender, but not my top, 2 or 3.
Well, John, we agree on the rather awkwardness of the campaign. The last race is an off the turf. I really felt that Protective was meant to run on the turf that day. I trust Pletcher, and we know what Irad's capable of. This horse has the pedigree to be a winner. I'm not disappointed in the fact that the horse is only 1 for 7 because he comes out of some big fields, some strong fields, got support at the window. This horse actually reminds me of, John, tell me if this, or any of you viewers, he reminds me of the path that Dreamlike took last year, who ironically almost won the Pennsylvania Derby last year, second to Saudi Crown in that slop monsoon. So Dreamlike had the similar path, and the horse is a good horse. Protective in this race is a contender, was higher on my list than most. I have Protected 4th on my precise order, a threat to win if my top 3 falter, and you will know who my top 3 are.
Okay, just step on it. I can't get to him. No way, no how. I think he's got a little bit of pace, and again, I think there's plenty of pace in this race, and the pace is going to be contested. So I don't really want somebody on the lead or fighting for it, but I think he's over his head.
Well, you guys are going to like this because this is as close as you could get to a horse. I put a line right through him because I was there on Haskell Day when they stepped this horse up to run into Haskell. And I looked at him in the paddock and I said to myself, my gosh, this horse looks like he should be in a $16,000 claiming race. I was not impressed with the horse's physicality. I remember that because it's the notes I used that day. Horse did come back and run nice in Smarty Jones, and it is a horse for the course. The horse's 2 best races were at Parks, but in my opinion, even with Wisconsin coming back, that morning line, and we were talking about morning lines, in my humble opinion, even with the speed and being a pace factor, if you look at the whole body of work, buyers in the 40s, buyers in the low 60s, buyers in the 50s, that horse should be a 35-1 morning line, complete throwout for me.
Okay. The likely favorite, Dragoon Guard. Powerhouse Connections, Juddmonte, Brad Cox, bred to the gills, Arrogate, going to be the favorite. I don't really like him all that much. He's coming off some beautiful setup. Nobody run with him on the lead, cruise control type of wins. I don't think he's going to get that kind of trip here. Even if he did get that kind of trip here, I think he's going to have some better horses running at him than he has in the past. I think Stronghold he caught when Stronghold needed a race coming off a layoff, and he didn't need a race and wasn't coming off a layoff. So I think he's ripe for the picking as the favorite, and I think he's going to have his hands a lot fuller than a lot of people might expect in this race. Not saying he's not a talented horse, not saying he's not a good horse, but, you know, he's an Indiana Derby, West Virginia Derby horse, and he's running against some horses that might be a cut above that, and the pace scenario, in my opinion, doesn't favor him at all. Soft trips that kind of make him look a little bit more dressed up than he really is.
Okay, cool, John. Interesting. I wanted to comment on Greg Vrabel. Greg, you said they're protective, great connections. Interestingly enough, I agree with you. And I heard Mike Rapoli say that he wants this race. And we know what Rapoli did in the Travers. And, you know, IRAD is IRAD. So protective is dangerous, going back to him for a second. But going forward, I just wanted to comment for Greg Vrabel. Dragon Guard. I do agree with John Stetton with what he just shared, but I just want to add 2 more notes on this. It is a Juddmonte homebred, nice-looking gray. Brad Cox, you know, as a conditioner, he's pointing to this race. He will be a pace factor, no doubt in my mind. But, again, 1 race is a juvenile, and then 4 different tracks, now soon to be 5. So the horses run at Churchill, Keeneland, Churchill's second time, Indiana, and over in West Virginia, the West Virginia Derby at Mountaineer. To me, even though Parks isn't the sole ground, based on the company the horse is facing and the improvement I'm expecting, I can never play this horse at a short price or a long price. Contender, I grudgingly put him as my third choice under my top two, and just making a slight grade over Protective, who's my fourth choice.
Okay, so there's one we're in agreement on. A lot of the comments are as well. Okay, Unmatched Wisdom. Must use for me. Must use for me. I don't like the trip, and I don't like the ride. And I'm not a fast one to criticize riders, but Irad was strangling this horse down the backside, really gave him no chance. Bumped. If you watch the head on, he did, get bumped a little bit coming out of the gate. I don't know how much that took out of him or affected him, did or didn't, I should say. But I didn't like his trip. I didn't like his ride. And one thing that I've noticed over the years, Chad has not got such a killer record at Parks, but one thing I've noticed about Chad Brown over the years, when he doesn't back off a horse off a subpar race and runs them in an aggressive spot, they almost always run big. Okay, and I've caught so many at nice prices over the years of him doing that. He knows when to back off, and he knows when to go forward. I think this horse can get a nice trip, stalking. I love him going back to Pratt, who's pressing all the right buttons. He's 3 for 3 on this horse. I don't think he's gonna clear, and I don't think he has to. I think he's going to be able to sit a trip, get the jump on deep closers, and he's one of two in here that I really like and consider must uses. And I agree with Big Race Jim, who's also on it. So, Gio.
Good job there, John. All right. So he's the 8 horse, and I didn't mention him in my precise order yet. He ended up being my second choice. I haven't gotten to my top choice yet. But here's what I have to say about Unmatched Wisdom. And again, I keep a record of this, and I know horses are upcoming horses when they develop late in the year. But going into the Travers, one of the things I said before that race, and in that race, if my viewers remember, I did not use him. I felt like beginning his career in May, after the Kentucky Derby the same year, doesn't run as a juvenile, begins his career in May, was very impressive in those races, made in special allowance and in the curling. But obviously the Travers at the time, even with Chad Brown and Irad at the time, the connections, it was just a tough ask against those seasoned, hard-hitting veterans. So now in this race, I think a little differently. I think this horse is very dangerous. I promise you, he will not, with a capital N, he will not be 8-1. I will eat this form and chew it up if he's 8-1. Unmatched Wisdom in this race, if you guys are interested in sending it in on him, he's not my top choice. He's going to be no more than 4-1, maybe even 7-2. Remember that.
I agree with that.
Talented horse. I don't know how they come up with an 8-1 morning line. Could win if my top choice doesn't. I'm going to use him in this race. And I think he's very talented. The Travers was the wrong time. This is a grade 1. Chad is pointing. Dangerous. But only using him in my multiples with my top choice. But I'm putting a win bet on my top choice.
Okay. Which I didn't check in with Jimmy the Cop, or I would already know who it is, but I already do know who it is just by the process of elimination. But we'll get there.
Yeah. And let me go first when we get there.
Okay. Who's the king? Next. Safi Joseph did win this race with a claimer once before. I don't think he's doing it again here.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to say any more. Next.
Yeah. One thing I will say.
Next was running in an earlier race, but next.
One thing I will say, and I don't want to start a whole new conversation because I'm a little bothered by it. Safi Joseph has been a little too successful lately. I don't like this horse. I'm bothered at his recent successes. Even though he's an excellent trainer out of Florida, now he's here and he gets Mike Smith to ride him over. Where did he get Mike Smith to go on this horse? In my opinion, cheap, can't win. And if this horse wins, I want an investigation put on Safi Joseph. I'm sorry.
All right.
Pass.
Moving right along. Uncle Heavy. You know, likes to track. Probably the best thing I could say about him. He's another one. I think the morning line's way off, 12-1, more like 120-1. I don't know. I think we considered him in the Preakness a little bit. We talked about him when he ran with Irad, when Irad rode him, but he hasn't done anything near good enough to suggest to me he can win this race.
Okay, you done, John, with him?
I'm done.
Okay, I got just an added comment on Uncle Heavy because even though I don't have him in my top 4, I may use him if I decide to do a super key and I got to put one more horse in because I still was enamored and attached to some race review going back after he won the Withers. I promise you, if you go back and watch the Wood Memorial, that horse just had a horrible trip, was wide throughout, and I felt that horse was much better than showed that day. But then he's faulted. He's disappointed me. But if it's not Saturday, Uncle Heavy is going to win at a price. So keep him on your calendar because he's going to pop. And he could close late and finish and hit the superfecta in this race.
All right. I'm not going to let you go first because we're going to keep the same format. We obviously know who you like. But I'll be a lot more brief and a lot more succinct than you will be. But I like Stronghold a lot. Obviously, you do too. I think he needed the last race. We found out some insight that we didn't know, or I didn't know going in, is that he's going to the Breeders' Cup Mile, not the Breeders' Cup Classic, which was interesting that Ace shared that with us, and I'm sure he knows what he's talking about. But, you know, I thought this horse had a realistic shot to win the Kentucky Derby. Didn't work out that way. He was the one that I feared just about the most from Sierra Leone, probably my second choice in the race. A lot of horses don't fire in the Kentucky Derby, but this horse I know is a fighter. I think there's a lot of speed to set him up. I think he does whatever Fresu wants him to do, moves when Fresu wants him to. My one fear from liking him a lot to loving him is that 11 hole. Okay, that's a wide draw. That track plays funny. Sometimes the inside's really bad and the outside's good. Sometimes it's the other way around. I don't know how it's going to be. I have a lot of confidence in Antonio Fresu to work out a trip and be in the right spot. But the 11 hole in a 1 1/8 at Parks going into that first turn can be a tough place to be. But, you know, along with Unmatched Wisdom, you know, those are the two that I like a lot and would be keying off in the pick 5 and trying to beat that Thorpedo Anna earlier. And we'll see what and Dragoon here, the favorite here. So I'll be able to use both of them. But I like Stronghold a lot. I think he's a major player. And I think, in my opinion, I know he won't be, but I think he is a deserving favorite over the Cox horse. That's just my opinion. But go ahead, Gio. We know you like him too. So,
let me ask you one thing before I give my analysis on him. He's my top choice, Stronghold, and I'm going to get into why even more so. But you stole some of my thunder because you like him. If John Stetton was going to have a top choice, separating the 11 with the 8, Unmatched Wisdom, who is it?
Oh, man, you're putting me on the spot.
Because on my sheet here, guys,
in my head,
I have a $200 exactor 11-8, and Mr. said he's going to send it in on that.
You're
Go
putting a gun to my head and saying I got to take only one.
Yes.
I would take.
We know you're using both in your multiples. We know that.
I would take reluctantly, and you'd have to put a gun to my head, but I would take Stronghold.
Okay, so I'll start my analysis. I'm based on that. It was close. And I told the viewers why Stronghold is my top choice. And even though the 8 is dangerous, and it's interesting that independently we conducted our handicap in this race and we land on the top 2 together.
Right. Everybody, just so you know, we don't discuss beforehand who we like, who you're taking. This is not ESPN where they tell the panelists, okay, you hype up the Jets, you hype up the Browns, you hype up the 49ers.
Yeah.
Because if you don't think that's what happens on ESPN, you're wrong. That's exactly what they do and what they tell people to do. So they're giving opinions that are going to generate ratings. We're talking about who we like and who we're going to bet.
Yes. All right. So Stronghold. To echo some of the points that John made, I completely trust Frezu to get the trip I need. When I reviewed some of the races, the thing that stuck out to me was the horse hasn't run his very best yet, and he's got a classic advantage. Remember, when you go into a race like this, if you look at the company that this horse has held through all of his body of work, and again, I like that he ran as a juvenile. I like the way he's developed as a 3-year-old. I think he sits a perfect trip. I'm trusting Frezu to take care of that trip. Good point, wide outside, but not too much speed to his inside. And there's enough speed in the race where he's going to sit in the catbird seat and be first to run down the field. He's 1 for 1 at the distance. And I feel that best race of his career is Saturday. 7 for 8 in exactas, tenacity. I trust Phil D'Amato. This horse is winning Saturday and will likely be the favorite in the big Breeders' Cup race going a mile.
Wow, that's a bold statement, but I could say you stole some of my thunder because he does have to improve in order to win. But I agree with you. I think he's sitting on his best race. I think that the race he ran second to Dragoon Guard was really a setup race for this race, or maybe if he would have went in the California race that's I think next Saturday or the Saturday after that, whenever it is. But I agree. I think he's sitting on his peak effort, and he's going to take us a big step forward. So we are on the same page, pretty much in the Pennsylvania Derby. And Jim, Big Race Jim, who's at the Jet game, is not far off. He likes Chad's horse, Unmatched Wisdom. So let's hope it's one of those two coming down the wire, and we're all against Dragoon Guard. Couple of things I will share. If you like racetrack stories, I put up a video the other day of a racetrack story that I think some of you will like and appreciate. If you haven't watched it yet, check it out. Let me know what you think. Don't be too harsh on me. I was young. We do dumb, stupid things when we're young. But it's a really good story, and it is what it is. It happened. I did it, and that's that. But I think you will like the story. Let me know what you think in the comments. The other thing is, you can see it. Our Past the Wire Breeders' Cup seminar is up on Past the Wire. There's links all over the place. Always a lot of fun. Always take some big swings. Always find some good ones to bet, and always find some good ones to bet against. Record speaks for itself. Ask anybody who's ever been to one of our seminars. It's definitely worth it. We do 2 big ones every year, the Derby and the Breeders' Cup. So grab a spot if you haven't already, and we'll see you there. It's definitely worth it. And we got some good racing coming up. We're heading out to the Breeders' Cup pretty soon. Looking forward to that. Gio will be covering it from home. Wish he was going to be there, but He's not. He's going to be covering it from the Jersey Shore, but Jim and I will be there. And I guess that's a wrap on our weekend preview.
Yeah, I just wanted to share an added thought related to what John DaSilva said when we were talking about morning lines. I implore you, if you try this as a handicapper, it will season you. Get the racing form with no post position, no morning lines. Go through the process of your handicap. You'll grow through what you go through. You'll learn and you'll find value because you'll realize that you're liking a horse through and through, because I do it, who I don't own a morning line, but I say I feel the morning line should be 4-1, and bam, I see 10-1. That's a horse I want to bet because it's all about opinion. So I may even do a show on that. I may do a show on that because I have a methodical approach that I feel has been successful with positioning myself to recognize underlays and overlays before they even become them. Okay?
He is very methodical. We know that.
Yeah, and one other thing. Like I said, John and Jim are going to be at the Breeders' Cup. You guys are going to be betting parks. I swear I grudgingly, someone hit me up on Twitter and saying, look, I know what you're saying, Seti, but I can't play parks. Listen, everybody's going to be at parks on Saturday. All the jocks, Johnny V, Florent Garou, Lescano, both Irad and Jose, Pratt, all the big barns, that's the spotlight. So with all the creepiness that could happen at parks, it ain't happening on Saturday. And that's why I was happy to see John DaSilva. It's a nice card. There are 4, I have to mention this, there are 4 state-bred stakes races, Pennsylvania bred. If you guys are interested, I got a couple of potential bombs coming out of a couple of races. A lot of the races are chalk. So if you guys say in the comments, I will do it for you. If you want my 14-race Geoseti handicap grid, precise order, I will do it. But I don't want to go through the whole process of doing it if people aren't anticipating it or if they're still going to bet Naira or Gulfstream and they're going to stay away from parks.
They want it.
Okay, cool.
They want it. They want the show and they want the grid.
You got it there.
There you go. There you go. All you need is one yes, and Gio will do it because he loves to do it anyway. So
yeah. And Friday night I'll be home.
Not like he's not going to do the work. So thank you all. We appreciate you all. Some of you are going to be contacted. You deserve hats. We got some more hats. They'll be going out. Love all you guys and gals. Love all the support.
Yeah, we do appreciate it.
You guys are helping us tremendously with the support and the channel, and we really thank you all for it. So with that, I guess ciao for now.
Yeah, we'll go back and go watch some Monday Night Football. I got some Montgomery
Thursday night football.
Oh, Thursday Night Football. That's right. I'm losing my mind. Thursday Night Football.
Look for Big Race Jim. He's there.
Yeah.
Ciao, everybody.
Take it easy. Take care.
Nobody does it better.
John, good show.